Good day again, students. I want to quickly apologize for the video abruptly ending on that way. I was just experiencing technical issues with regards to load shedding and so forth. But nevertheless, let us just pick up from where we left off with regards to viewing and analyzing true investigative journalism with Deborah Peta on Third Degree with regards to the meat industry and the halal industry. Just to recap from where we come from, this is just part 2 of the online lesson. Let me just quickly share my screen with you guys so that you guys can get the quintessential parts of this particular lesson. I hope that my screen is successfully shared with you guys. Let me just go back to that video so that we can pick up from where we left off.
Labels. You see that? There's also a bit more, but it's still busy there.
The workers skillfully removed the last vestiges of glue from the old labels, making sure no trace of the old label can be detected.
I mean, they were busy with this on a daily basis. There was like from the beginning till the end of the day.
The labeling machines are clearly visible in owner Gertner's office. Fake halal labels are pasted on by a store manager. Expiry dates of chicken grillers are rubbed off, new ones put on. So what was the incentive to relabel? Would it have been price?
It's a big price difference. You import pork parts at 950 per kilo. You import sheep parts at around about 1350. It's in the middle of the dry goods store. You can't hide there. You can clearly see this is not staged.
And indeed, owner Patrick Gertner does insist the nefarious relabeling was carried out by Van Staden and Lombard in secret, hidden from view by packing boxes. But after visiting the plant ourselves and watching these videos closely, it was clear that it must have happened in plain sight. There is simply no secret corner in this open plan warehouse for anything to be hidden. Orion dubs itself a state-of-the-art cold storage facility, boasting 3,000 tons of freezer space. It may appear sophisticated and professional, but it seems questions about its business practices need to be asked. Coming up, we confront Patrick Gertner.
You know what? I've actually had enough. Thanks.
Welcome back. You're watching Third Degree. We're coming to you from Cape Town. We're here at the Orion Cold Meat Storage. Now, a lot of allegations have been leveled at the CEO of Orion Storage, Patrick Gertner. We thought it best to come and let him answer for himself. We started by asking, were pork and other non-halal products relabeled as halal meat on his premises?
I can't deny that it's happened, and that's what obviously created the greatest shock. We cannot deny that it's happened, and we cannot deny that some of them took place on our property. The videos are crystal clear with it.
So pork was relabeled as halal?
Well, we don't know if it was 1 box, if it was 10 boxes, if it was 100 boxes.
Then, amazingly, he suddenly does seem to know the finer details. You can't say definitively where that meat went.
I can. Yes, we've been able to isolate exactly where it's gone to.
But you don't know how often it happened. You said you don't know how often it happened.
But it would have only gone to his clients because these are the only ones who supervise. I know, I'm telling you that.
You know what's going on in your factory, or you don't know what's going on in your factory. If you didn't know it was happening, you don't know how many batches were relabeled and what was sent out. About why exactly boxes had been relabeled, he stuck to his story, namely that Van Staden and Lombard were trying to extort money from him, had resorted to blackmail, threatened to expose the videos. This is such a clumsy attempt to blackmail.
Well, your comment, not mine.
Yes. It's just absurd, okay? But now you're attributing all these other deep hidden sabotage motives to him. It doesn't make sense. Which one is it? Because you've got so many explanations for it.
Yeah, I've made it clear that it's extortion.
Which one is it?
Financial gain.
Is it to get? But he
financial.
Get financial.
Not for me, no. How do you know that?
But she didn't.
Who brought the application?
So now you're saying the other competitors are also in on the act to destroy you.
I don't doubt that for a second.
There's absolutely no conspiracy against Patrick Gurtner. From anybody in the written industry, we will not gain 1 kilogram of business or 1 cent profit with him out of the market. The only thing we will gain is a clean market.
You know what? I've actually had enough. Thanks. I think.
Well, you don't want me to ask you these questions.
No, you know what? I think you've made up your mind before you've even.
I'm asking you questions. And people who walk away generally are guilty. Okay. He eventually agreed to continue the interview, even showing some remorse. You have a huge Muslim clientele.
I do.
And it's deeply insulting to them.
I know that. And trust me, we had no intention of offending the Muslim community. Some of our major clients are Muslims. Yes, with hindsight, things happened that shouldn't have. But, you know.
What happened that shouldn't have happened?
We can't deny that Van Staden and Lombard did relabeled product. That should never have happened.
I've not engineered nothing of that. It's all been done by Patrick Gurtner. He prints the labels. He supplies them to the labor downstairs. He pays his labor. He sells the product as falsified or low. I've not engineered none of it.
It's very easy just to blame other people. Don't you bear ultimate accountability as the boss? The buck stops with you.
I've got to accept that it happened on my premises. Yes, I can't.
Because either you were a poor manager and you didn't have control over what was going on, or you were involved.
I come into the warehouse maybe once a week, once every second week.
Literally every day he was on the floor. That's a complete outrageous. I mean, that's just a lie. He checks there, I was in fact, he gives out labels. And he asks Gary Cox and the floor manager, I mean, is everything done? Is something delabeled, ready to be relabeled to go out for possible orders for the Friday or the week after? I mean, now he was hands on 250%.
Yet when we asked him about why veal, which should have a V code, in fact had a P for pork code, he once again pleaded ignorance.
I won't know. I don't deal directly with a stock.
Why is a veal heart labeled with a pork label?
Where do you see a pork label?
Yeah.
And a pt2 you're telling me is a pork label?
According to your things, it is.
I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know what a pork is labeled. I'll tell you, okay? Pork hearts, pt2. Pork trimmings,
Okay, let me have a look. I haven't seen this before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this would be a confirmation of sale that would be prepared. Outstanding orders.
So why is veal labeled with pork?
I couldn't tell you. Van Staden could have allocated it against that. We could be waiting for beef products to come through. I can't answer it.
Of course, he knows what it goes with. It's his company. Every week they had a stock meeting. There's one person doing the purchasing for Ryan Cosworth, that's Patrick Gurtner himself. He negotiates the price with the importers. He sourced the product from importers. Every order was placed on email to Patrick's office. He signed off on every order. Everything was on was done in Ryan Cosworth's name. Every invoice was sent out from them. Every invoice was signed, faxed back to Ryan Cosworth. Everyone was paid to Ryan Cosworth.
We spoke to another source who gave us the inside on the meat industry. Stories abound about Gurtner's unscrupulous activities, which have been going on for years.
That's actually the gist of how the business is operated from day one, right? To find the loopholes to allow them to be more competitive, right, into the market.
Gurtner has also done this kind of thing before, calling a product something that it's not. In this case, to undercut the market and save on import duties.
Imported cheese, right? They brought them in under different descriptions than what they actually were, the products, right? And as far as I'm aware, and it's well documented, the matter lands up in court, right? And I'm aware of the fact that he lost his case. The courts are saying that it was Gardo, right? And he was forced to pay, right? He was found guilty of that, but I understand he was forced to pay, right? The difference between the duty structures between the two, right? And that case was settled, if I'm not mistaken, in the late 1990s.
Just a little slap on the wrist, undo it again, and Patrick doesn't think he's untouchable. He will never stop until you stop him.
Consumers being blindfolded, right, purely for the advantage of the individual, right, or the company that's doing these actions in order to make a lot of money.
After the break, the Muslim Judicial Council refuses to talk to us. Not there. You join us here on a windy Cape Town day outside the Muslim Judicial Council headquarters. Now, clearly the MJC has some answers and explaining to do. We want to know why Orion was given halal certification in the first place. But more importantly, the MJC is the custodian of what is and is not halal. They are here as a shining example to the Muslim community and yet are hiding behind closed doors. In the aftermath of the halal scandal, MJC Deputy President S.O.D.C agreed to give us an interview. But once difficult questions emerged about the process of halal certification, he stopped taking our calls. Today we've come to speak to either the Deputy or the President himself. She sends us downstairs. No, I'm going to answer my call. I'm going to wait for him. I'm not going. We've had enough. We've been trying to get hold of him for 2 weeks. At this point, we are keen to speak to either the Deputy or the President. So we waited. It wasn't long before another official, the Secretary General, came to speak to us. He informed us that the Deputy President, S.O.D.C, was very sick, very different to the information we'd been given moments before that he was unavailable. Is there somebody else who can do your interview?
At this moment in time, there's nobody. Well, there's nobody. I mean, Sheikh Ahmed Siddiqui is the person.
What about the President?
Maulana Ihsan Hendricks has also been off sick, ma'am.
President is sick. How long has he been sick for?
Ma'am, I'm not going to engage in any of this discussion. I'm not. That is not relevant. It is not relevant to your interview, ma'am. We are wanting to be. I've listened to you, ma'am. I am saying that we will afford you an opportunity.
Being sick. My experience, and I've been doing this for a long time, is that if there's nothing to hide and people want to talk to you, then they communicate very quickly. They listen. Sorry, Deborah. Sorry, Barbara. We can't meet you now because we're not well, or the person we need to speak to is off. And we'll get back to it sometime. We've SMS, we've emailed, we've phoned. But you're not just not responding to us, you're not responding to anyone because the questions have gone a little bit farther. So for me to just be put off by being told so-and-so is sick and this one is sick, I have to ask questions. So I'm asking you, how long has the President been sick? Because you told me the Secretary General been sick for a couple of days. Your President, amazingly, coincidentally, is also sick.
I'm saying that we will afford you an opportunity.
So what they're saying is that both senior executives are sick. Doubly strange that a top-level executive meeting is in full swing in the President's office and neither of them are present. No. Which is the President's car? Okay. Suspicious, we confronted them again.
We are people of faith.
Well, people of faith, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, I'm not alive.
I know the President is I know the President is
President of the Muslim Judicial Council is present. Not the Deputy President.
You told me the President is sick.
The President, Maulana Ihsan Hendricks.
You told me he's been sick. You told me he wasn't here.
No, I didn't say that.
You did. Eventually, our persistence paid off. They agreed to an interview.
I communicated with you on top there that we will confirm with you after the interview. We can confirm that for tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
But the offer seems a way to get rid of us. The next day they phoned to tell us, and I quote, "The MJC has taken a decision not to engage you any further on the matter." Undeterred, we once again requested an interview. Their response, their executive would discuss the matter. To date, we have heard nothing further. So we are unable to ask them about halal certification, how factories are checked for compliance, how the relabeling scandal happened on their watch, and most importantly, how the money made from halal certification is spent. But we're not the only ones looking for answers. Many Muslims are angry They want transparency.
The Muslim Judicial Council lied to the Muslim public categorically because they told us that they only certified poultry, whilst the certificate they issued to Ryan Cold Storage Company was for poultry and meat. And Mr. Gertner, in his court appearance and in his court papers, reaffirmed that they actually certified meat as well. MJC Halal Trust has never ever given any indication of how much money they're making and how the money is being spent. It is those select elite few that make up the core, the center of these organizations that are living with the fat of the halal industry.
Unable to get answers from the MJC, we asked its sister body, the South African National Halal Association, where the MJC went wrong and how the halal certification works.
Site audit is conducted of the actual manufacturing facilities or processing facilities. And once the site audit is conclusively conducted, you would have to set up controls to manage and ensure continuity and consistency of the halal program thereafter.
In this instance, they clearly derelicted on their duty as halal certified because by their own admission, they never ever did an audit of the actual cold storage itself.
I think pure laxity on the part of the regulatory body, where they gave registration to a company based on certain products, and that also at the port of entry, and no jurisdiction over the actual premises where the product was stored and distributed from.
The debacle is a terrible blow to Muslim trust in halal products.
It's been a wake-up call for all segments, for the industry. It's been a wake-up call for the halal regulatory bodies, and it's been a wake-up call for the consumers as well.
There have been questions around halal for many years. Further, the broader meat industry appears to be riddled with messy underhand dealings. It's time to get rid of the rot. A week before broadcast, we offered the MJC another chance for an interview. They have not responded. But interestingly, they have gone ahead and revoked Orion's halal certification. No explanation has been given.
Yes, guys. So I hope you guys have learned a lot from what investigative journalism is about, you know, and the things that are actually happening behind the curtains. So it's just so interesting to watch true journalists do their work and investigative work to serve the greater parts of human beings, because at the end of the day, when you are a journalist, you serve the purpose of human rights, of enforcing human rights upon people, of uplifting correcting human behavior and putting people obviously in check. I mean, you can only imagine what the halal community was actually going through at that point. So that's what responsible journalists is about. And citizens too have rights as well as responsibilities when it comes to news. So the average person right now, guys, more than ever, works like a journalist, writing a blog entry, commenting on social media sites, sending a tweet, or liking a picture, a post, likely involves a shorthand version of journalistic processes. And one comes across information and decides whether or not it's believable or not. You either assess its strength as well as its weaknesses, you determine if its value to others is there, and you decide, obviously, to ignore what to pass on and chooses the best way to share it. And that's what moving on to what citizen journalism is about, slowly further away from what investigative journalist is about. Who is involved? What is involved? What is the problem? How are the Muslim community affected by this? How are they affected spiritually? What is the impact of the meat industry being hoaxed by gangsters in suits, changing prices of or false advertising as well. It's a very deep thing. So that's what journalists is about, going down to the bottom of a story, searching it fully, and bringing the truth out to the public and the community, because people and human beings deserve loyalty. They deserve the truth. They deserve honesty, and that's service. It's great service to them, and that's what broadcast journalism is about. That's what investigative journalist is about. That's what gonzo journalism is about. There are also two things, guys, however, that separate journalistic-like processes from the end product that is what we call journalist or journalism. The first one, guys, is motive and intent. Now, the real purpose and aim of journalism is to give people the information they need to help them make better decisions about their lives in their society. The second fundamental reason and the difference is that the journalism involves the conscious systematic application of a discipline of verification to produce the functional truth, as opposed to something that is merely interesting or informative. Yet while this process is critical, today, when the world is awash in information and the news is available at any time and everywhere, a new relationship is being formed between the suppliers of journalism and the people who consume it, right? And the new journalist is no longer a gatekeeper who decides what the public should and should not know. The individual is now in his or her own circulation manager and the editor to be relevant. So as a result, guys, journalists must now verify information the consumer already has and is likely to find help them to make sense of what it all means. So thus, guys, many journalists write that the first task of the new journalist, in a sense, is to verify what information is reliable, like we've seen Deborah Butter do on Third Degree, investigating this matter, and then to order it to people so that people can grasp it efficiently. A part of this new journalistic responsibility, guys, is to then provide citizens with the tools they need to extract knowledge for themselves, for the undifferentiated flood of humor, to separate humor from propaganda, from gossip, from fact assertion, and the allegations of the communication systematic process. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this lesson. I just wanted to share a video with you guys with regards to what citizen journalism is also about. I hope that this video is still recording, because yes, let me just quickly share my screen with you guys. Sharing screen. I hope that you guys can see what I am seeing right now. Now I want to go to the last part of this lesson. Now, we've learned about what data is, where to look, impact, as well as the emotion. Now we're applying the concept of S.O.D.C to research. The S in S.O.D.C, guys, stands for specificity. What is specificity? When we speak about specificity, when it comes to a subject matter, when it comes to telling a story, and when it comes to a message, right? We are speaking to clarity in what your subject matter is about. In the case that the video we've just consumed and seen now, the case study, and with the specificity in the subject matter, message, as well as the story. You need to be very specific about what your subject matter is, what your message is, and what your story is. The subject matter in the video that we've just consumed is the meat industry deceiving the Muslim community about halal food not actually being halal. So that is false advertising in the meat industry, exposing corruption. Now, what is the message that we are trying to get? The message that we're trying to get across from this investigative journalist by Deborah Petter is that we must be very, very, very careful as consumers of what we consume in the shops. You find that chicken is no longer chicken. Now we're eating turkey in the space of that. Now we'd be eating birds in the space of that. Something as as quintessential as beef could be labeled beef when they could have shot a jackal, for an example. So the message is very strong and it's very clear to say, let us be more conscious in our buying as consumers. Let us be more responsible as business owners to give the public the truth, and more so our religious affiliations as people are very important to us. So it's very, very, very important that what we consume as vegetarians is what the advertisers say it is. So the message is very clear. And what is the story, guys? The story we are following is how the meat industry deceives people through and makes billions and billions of money in this particular market to rob consumers off of their faith through calling things what they are not and posing things as what they're not. So we need to be very specific when it comes to research. So specificity is very important. Now, the O stands for originality. Are you original in your subject matter? Are you original in your message? Are you original in your story? What is different about the story? The story has not been exposed before. The story is very original because it affects the Muslim communities, which is a marginalized group which we never speak of in South Africa. It's original in that regard. Is the story more original? Originality involves uniqueness, guys. We need something that is very unique and something that is very unusual. So what we've just seen from Deborah Preta as a result of investigative journalists is and can be considered original. The D stands for defensibility. Can your research stand its ground? Can it defend itself? True journalism can defend itself because nothing can contest against the truth. So you come with facts, sufficient facts as enough evidence to support your statement, to support your facts, to support your message, to support your viewpoint, to support ultimately your subject matter as well as your story. So in this regard, it can defend itself because it is rooted in the truth. It is rooted in verifiable, certifiable, and qualifiable information with regards to external sources that are able to give us the truth and their true version of what they've just seen with regards to exposing the meat industry. So can it defend itself? Yes, it can, because there's what we call intertextual references, enough credible sources to be able to back up your ideas and your claims as a journalist. Now moving forward to the C stands for contestability. Can your entertainment product or can your version of the truth in what you are shooting as a journalist or in broadcast journalism and radio contest itself? Can it stand the test of time? Bearing in mind that this video that I've just shared with you guys is a video that took place 10 years ago and it still stands today, is a reflection and a good example for what we mean by contestability. Can it contest the stand of time? Now, it's very relevant today, even if it happened 10 years or 15 years ago, because this exposes the truth about what's still going on behind the shadows and behind the curtains of the meat industry. And not only in the meat industry, this is also happening in many faculties. If you guys can remember, there was this Ebola thing where there was a breakout of Ebola and listeriosis found in different products of ham and cheese and so forth. So these are some of the things that we need to unpack and uncover, and some of the stories that we need to start talking about, even if they happened many years ago. I know we spoke about the concept of timeliness, but timeliness can contest itself if it is still relevant. Some of these things go undocumented and unbroadcasted, so therefore they're still relevant because many of our people here today go across and not have seen it, not having seen it or not having been aware of such information happening. Imagine having to be a vegetarian and somebody calls you, sells you fish, only to discover that that's not fish, it's snake, and they look the same. You feel contaminated, you feel betrayed, and these are some of the stories that can contest the hands of time. So always apply SODC or the principle of SODC to your research. Remember, it's specific in its subject matter, in its story, as well as its message. It must be original in its subject matter, in its message, as well as its story. It must be able to defend itself in its subject matter, in its message, as well as its story, and it should be able to contest the days of time. Guys, I want to share with you guys the last video with regards to referencing, or maybe 2 more videos with regards to referencing and topics of interest that I think maybe you guys can be able to, you know, interactively see. But let's go back to referencing. I know that we dealt with referencing, but I think
looking to the academic skills, knowledge, or ask series, where you'll find information, tips to help you. A reference refers your readers to the outset of your work, to faculty and peers that you're part of an academic community and understand how to present your work in a scholarly way. Depending on the academic subject, reference lists are often presented at the end of assignments. A typical reference list will alphabetically list each source you have mentioned or cited in the body of your work and include the name and initials of the author, the date of the publication, and the name of the article and journal it comes from, along with any volume numbers. Book references often include place of publication and publisher name. Citations, or in-text citations, are abbreviated references found in the body of academic texts. When we talked about references, we stated that they direct your reader to the sources you've used in your writing. In the same way, citations are also signposts, only this time they direct your reader to the reference list. As a result, citations are very short, often including only the author's surname and year of publication, and sometimes the page number. Every time you cite another author's work, whether by quoting directly or paraphrasing ideas, you're required to provide an in-text citation to acknowledge the work and to signpost your reader to the reference list. This might be, for example, when you are introducing a business model or discussing significant research findings of others. You would not be expected to provide a citation for common knowledge, such as dates of events or names of public figures, even if you read about them in a book or article. Depending on your subject, you'll follow a specific style guide, such as Harvard or APA, to assist you in creating accurate and uniformly formatted citations. Referencing and citation is a necessity, but it needn't be a headache. Remember these tips. Be sure to find and become familiar with a style guide for your subject before you start writing. You can then incorporate the correct type of citation as you write. Keep the style guide handy and refer to it often. Use the examples as a template for your own references. Above all, keep clear and detailed notes as you research. List all the sources you have read and note down exactly where any quotes come from. A good recording system will save you many hours at the end of an assignment searching for details of your sources. You've made a good first step if you now understand why referencing and citation are important. Remember, there's always help out there from your faculty member and the Writing Centre staff, as well as information in the Centre for Student Success. Thanks for watching our presentation on reference. We hope you continue to enjoy the Ask series.
So guys, that was just a reminder of the referencing. I know that we've dealt with it in this particular lesson. I just wanted to show you guys and just remind you guys the kind of referencing that some of the tips that other people actually might have for you guys when you're actually conducting research, as well as why it's important to actually reference. I want to guys show you the last video with regards to citizen journalism, because I believe that it's very important. You guys might have seen it, you guys might not have seen it, but I feel like it's very important for you guys to share, to be able to know that you as a person having the most powerful tool, which is a cell phone in your hand, serves as a stepping stone and as a cornerstone of being a responsible citizen journalist. So I believe that this video will definitely open your mind about what citizen journalism is about, why it's important, and how you can actually take part in being a citizen journalist. So let me just do this. And I hope that my screen is still sharing so that you guys can see what
Well, hello everybody. I'm here to talk to you about
a new way of doing journalism. Some people call this citizen journalism. Other people call it collaborative journalism, but really it kind of means this. For the journalists, people like me, it means accepting that you can't know everything and allowing other people through technology to be your eyes and your ears. And for people like you, for other members of the public, it can mean not just being the passive consumers of news, but also co-producing news. And I believe this can be a really empowering process. It can enable ordinary people to hold powerful organizations to account. So I'm going to explain this to you today with two cases, two stories that I've investigated, and they both involve controversial deaths. And in both cases, the authorities put out an official version of events, which was somewhat misleading. We were able to tell an alternative truth, utilizing new technology, utilizing social media, particularly Twitter. Essentially what I'm talking about here is, as I said, citizen journalism. So to take the first case, this is Ian Tomlinson, man in the foreground. He was a newspaper vendor from London, and on the 1st of April 2009, he died at the G20 protests in London. Now, he wasn't a protester, he'd been trying to find his way home from work through the demonstrations, but he didn't get home. He had an encounter with the man behind him, and as you can see, the man behind him has covered his face with a balaclava, and in fact, he wasn't showing his badge numbers. But I can tell you now, he was PC Simon Harwood, a police officer with London's Metropolitan Police Force. In fact, he belonged to the elite territorial support group. Now, moments after this image was shot, Harwood struck Tomlinson with a baton, and he pushed him to the ground, and Tomlinson died moments later. But that wasn't the story the police wanted us to tell. Initially, through official statements and off-the-record briefings, they said that Ian Tomlinson had died of natural causes. They said that there had been no contact with police, that there were no marks on his body. In fact, they said that when police tried to resuscitate him, that police medics were impeded from doing so because protesters were throwing missiles believed to be bottles at police. And the result of that was stories like this. I show you this slide because this was the newspaper that Ian Tomlinson had been selling for 20 years of his life. And if any news organization had an obligation to properly forensically analyze what had been going on, it was the Evening Standard newspaper. But they, like everyone else, including my news organization, were misled by the official version of events put out by police. But you can see here the bottles that were supposedly being thrown at police were turned into bricks by the time they reached this edition of the newspaper. So we were suspicious and we wanted to see if there was more to the story. We needed to find those protesters that you can see in the image, but of course they had vanished by the time we started investigating. So how do you find the witnesses? And this is what, for me, where it got really interesting. We turned to the internet. Now this is Twitter. We've heard a lot about it today. Essentially, for me, when I began investigating this case, I was completely new to this. I'd signed up 2 days earlier. And I discovered that Twitter was a microblogging site. It enabled me to send out short 140 character messages, also an amazing search facility. But it was a social arena in which other people were gathering with a common motive. And it is, in this case, independently of journalists, people themselves were interrogating exactly what had happened to Ian Tomlinson in his last 30 minutes alive. Individuals like these two guys. So they went to Ian Tomlinson's aid after he collapsed. They phoned the ambulance. They didn't see any bottles, they didn't see any bricks. But they were concerned that the stories weren't quite as accurate as police were claiming them to be. And again, through social media, we started encountering individuals with material like this, photographs, evidence. Now, this does not show the attack on Ian Tomlinson, but he appears to be in some distress. Was he drunk? Did he fall over? Did this have anything to do with the police officers next to him? Here he appears to be talking to them. For us, this was enough to investigate further, to dig deeper. The result was putting out stories ourselves. Now, one of the most amazing things about the internet is the information that people put out is freely available to anyone, as we all know. But that doesn't just go for citizen journalists. That doesn't just go for people putting out messages on Facebook or Twitter. That goes for journalists themselves, people like me. As long as your news is the right side of a paywall, i.e. it's free, anybody can access it. And stories like these, which were questioning the official version of events, which were skeptical in tone, allowed people to realize that we had questions ourselves. They were online magnets. Individuals with material that could help us were drawn toward us by some kind of gravitational force. And after 6 days, we managed to track down around 20 witnesses. And we plotted them here on the map. This is the scene of Ian Tomlinson's death, the Bank of England in London. And each of these witnesses that we plotted on the map, you could click on these small bullet points and you could hear what they had to say, see their photographic image, and at times see their videographic images as well. But still, at this stage, with witnesses telling us that they'd seen police attack Ian Tomlinson before his death, still, police refused to accept that. There was no official investigation into his death. And then something changed. I got an email from an investment fund manager in New York. On the day of Ian Tomlinson's death, he'd been in London on business, and he'd taken out his digital camera, and he'd recorded this. This is the crowd of G20 protest on April the 1st, around 7:20 p.m. They are on the corner near the Bank of England. This footage will form the basis of the police investigation into the death of this man. Ian Tomlinson was walking through this area, attempting to get home from work. We've slowed down the footage to show how it posed a serious question for police conduct. Ian Tomlinson had his back to riot officers and dog handlers, and was walking away from them. He had his hands in his pockets. Here, the riot officer appears to strike Tomlinson's leg area with a baton. He then lunges at Tomlinson from behind. Tomlinson is propelled forward and hits the floor. Okay, so shocking stuff. That video wasn't playing too well, but when I first watched the video for myself, I mean, I've been in touch with this investment fund manager in New York, and I'd become obsessed with this story. I've spoken to so many people who'd said they'd seen this happen, and the guy on the other end of the phone was saying, "Look, the video shows it," but I didn't want to believe him until I actually saw it for myself. And 2 o'clock in the morning, I was there with an IT guy. The video wasn't coming, it wasn't working, and then finally it landed, and I clicked on it. And I just realized this was really something quite significant. And within 15 hours, we put it on our website. The first thing police did was they came to our office, senior officers came to our office and asked us to take the video down. We said no. It would have been too late anyway, of course, because it had traveled around the world. And the officer in that film, in 2 days' time, will appear before an inquest jury in London. And they have the power to decide that Ian Tomlinson was unlawfully killed. So that's the first case. 2 cases today. The second case is this man. Now, like Ian Tomlinson, he was a father. He lived in London, but he was a political refugee, okay, from Angola. And 6 months ago, the British government decided they wanted to return him to Angola. He was a failed asylum seeker. So they booked him a seat on an airline, okay, a flight from Heathrow. Now, the official version of events, the official explanation of Jimmy Mabenga's death was simply that he'd taken ill. He'd become unwell on the flight, the plane had returned to Heathrow, and then he was transferred to hospital and pronounced dead. Now, what actually happened to Jimmy Mabenga, the story that we were able to tell my colleague Matthew Taylor and I, was that actually 3 security guards began trying to restrain him in his seat. When he was resisting his deportation, they were restraining him in his seat. They placed him in a dangerous hold. It keeps detainees quiet. He was making a lot of noise, but it can also lead to positional asphyxia, form of suffocation. So you have to imagine here that there were other passengers on the plane, and they could hear him saying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, they're killing me." And then he stopped breathing. So how did we find these passengers? In the case of Ian Tomlinson, the witnesses were still in London, but these passengers, many of them, had returned to Angola. How are we going to find them? Well, again, we turned to the internet, and we wrote, as I said before, stories, they're online magnets. The tone of some of these stories, journalism professors might frown upon because they were skeptical, they were asking questions. perhaps speculative, maybe the kind of things that journalists shouldn't do, but we needed to do it. And we needed to use Twitter also. Here I'm saying an Angolan man dies on the flight, the story could be big, a level of speculation. This next tweet says, please RT, that means please retweet, please pass down the chain. Now, one of the fascinating things about Twitter is that the pattern of flow of information is unlike anything we've ever seen before. We don't really understand it, but once you let go of a piece of information, it travels like wind. You can't determine where it ends up. But strangely, tweets have an uncanny ability to reach their intended destination. And in this case, it was this man. He says, I was also there on BA77, that's the flight number, and the man was begging for help, and I now feel so guilty that I did nothing. Now, this was Michael. He was on an Angolan oil field when he sent me this tweet. I was in my office in London. He had concerns about what happened on the flight. He'd gone onto his laptop, he typed in the flight number, he'd encountered that tweet, he'd encountered our stories, he realized we had an intention to tell a different version of events. We were skeptical, and he contacted me. And this is what Michael said.
Well, I'm pretty sure the time out of the situation. The last thing we heard from the second was breaking. And you know, the pretty security guards, I think one of them looked like 100 kilos plus. You know, down on all in what I can see, what we see. From bringing in trying to set it down. It's picking up a little, and you know, and power out, you know, help me. And you can see the pretty security guard sitting on top of them from there. For the rest of my life, just gonna have to listen to them.
So that was his interpretation of what had happened on the flight. And Michael was actually one of 5 witnesses that we eventually managed to track down, most of them, as I said, through the internet, through social media, and we could actually place them on the plane so you could see exactly where they were sat. And I should say at this stage that one really important dimension to all of this, for journalists who utilize social media and who utilize citizen journalism, is making sure we get our facts correct. And verification is absolutely essential. So in the case of the Ian Tomlinson witnesses, I got them to return to the scene of the death and physically walk me through and tell me exactly what they had seen. That was absolutely essential. In the case of Mabenga, of course, we couldn't do that, but they could send us their boarding passes. And we could interrogate what they were saying and ensure it was consistent with what other passengers were saying too. The danger in all of this for journalists, for all of us, is that we're victims of hoaxes or that there's deliberate misinformation fed into the public domain. So we have to be careful. But nobody can deny the power of citizen journalism. When a plane crashes into the Hudson 2 years ago, and the world finds out about this because a man is on a nearby ferry, he takes out his iPhone and he photographs the image of the plane and sends it around the world. I mean, that's how most people found out initially, in the early minutes and hours, about the plane in the Hudson River. And think of the 2 biggest news stories of the year. Okay, we had the Japanese earthquake and the tsunami. And cast your mind's eye back to the images that you saw on your television screens. They were, you know, boats left 5 miles inland. They were houses being moved along as if in the sea. You know, water lifting up inside people's living rooms, supermarkets shaking. These were images shot by citizen journalists and instantly shared on the internet. And the other big story of the year, the political crisis, the political earthquake in the Middle East. And it doesn't matter if it was Egypt or Libya or Syria or Yemen. Individuals have managed to overcome the repressive restrictions in those regimes by recording their environment and telling their own stories on the internet. Again, always very difficult to verify, but potentially a huge layer of accountability. This image, and I could have shown you any actually, I mean, YouTube is full of them. This image is of a apparently unarmed protester in Bahrain, and he's being shot by security forces. It doesn't matter if the individual being mistreated, possibly even killed, is in Bahrain or in London, but citizen journalism and this technology has inserted a new layer of accountability into our world. And I think that's a good thing. So to conclude, theme of the conference, why not? I think for journalists, it's quite simple, really. I mean, why not utilize this technology, which massively broadens the boundaries of what's possible, except that many of the things that happen in our world now go recorded, and we can obtain that information through social media. That's new for journalists. The stories I showed you, I don't think we would have been able to investigate 10 years ago, possibly even 5 years ago. I think there's a very good argument to say that the two deaths, the death of Ian Tomlinson and the death of Jimmy Mavenga, well, we still today wouldn't know exactly what happened in those cases. And why not for people like yourselves? Well, I think that's very simple too. If you encounter something that you believe is problematic, that disturbs you, that concerns you, an injustice of some kind, something that doesn't feel quite right, then why not witness it, record it, and share it? That process of witnessing, recording, and sharing is journalism, and we can all do it. So thank you. Well, hello everybody. I'm here to talk to you about a new way of doing journalism. Some people call this citizen journalism. Other people call it collaborative journalism. But really, it kind of means this. For the journalists, people like me, it means accepting that you can't know everything and allowing other people through technology to be your eyes and your ears. And for people like you, for other members of the public, it can mean not just being the passive consumers of news, but also co-producing news. And I believe this can be a really empowering process. It can enable ordinary people to hold powerful organizations to account.